Hello, and welcome back to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are dealing with staff tool strategies once again. Specifically, we are looking at the staff and group name positioning. Now, in the previous video, I showed you how to actually change the staff names themselves, and we mostly do that from the score manager. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the options for the full name, the abbreviated name, and the auto numbering for those instruments. Well, the positions themselves appear in a different location. In fact, if we go into the staff tool and double click to get to the staff attributes, we will see an option here under appearance for full staff name position and abbreviated staff name position. Likewise, for group names, if I double click my piano part here to get to the group attributes, there's an option for the full group name and abbreviated name, but this time they're giving us the option directly in this window to edit the text, but also the option to change the position. And there's a position button here, and there's two boxes that are not checked in this case. Now, when you first set up instruments, in the staff attributes and in the group attributes, the check mark for the positioning will be unchecked. What this means is that the position of the staff name here will take on the default position of the staff name. So we can override that on a staff by staff or group by group basis by checking these options, and then in the staff attributes pressing the set button, or in the group attributes pressing the position button. But as long as we leave all of these unchecked, then all of these staff names are going to take on the default staff name position. So where do we find the default staff name position, and how do we change it? Good question. Well, we have to make sure we're in the staff tool, and then we go to the staff menu, and about 3/4 of the way down there's a section for positioning, and this one says set default name positions, and it gives us 4 options: the full staff names, the abbreviated staff names, the full group names, and the abbreviated group names. This is where we're going to change the default position for all of these things. Now, the full staff name obviously is the name that appears on the first system, and the abbreviated staff names are the names that appear over here on the second system and beyond. If we change the abbreviated staff name position, we're changing it for all of the positions from the second system on. So let's just look what happens when we select the full staff names position option. What we get is this position full staff name default dialog box, and this is where we're going to set the position for all of the staff names, basically. Now, interestingly, it will always put in this box the largest staff name that you currently have in your score, which is helpful because sometimes if you're doing things with the alignment differently, it will be good to know exactly how far the text is going to go to the right, but I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, it will always pull up the longest name that you have. So there's a few things going on here. We have this alignment, and we have the options for right, left, and center, and we have the distance from staff section, and we also have this justification, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But let's start with the alignment and the distance from staff. So when it's right aligned, basically what you're seeing, and if you look in the score, you'll see all the handles are sort of lining up on the right edge. This is what's, right aligning the texts. From here, we have the horizontal offset, which is set now to -0.15 approximately, which is taking that right alignment, so the right edge of the text, and sending it 0.15 to the left of the left bar line here. That's what's allowing this to have a little space here. We can change this value if we want. In fact, if we make this 0.3 instead and click OK, what you'll see is that all of the staff names now on the first system, because I was only adjusting the full names, get sent a little bit farther to the left. If I undo that, you'll see it go back to where it was. All right, so let's just go back there. Full staff names. So that's the horizontal. The vertical is just that. It's strange that they don't pin this from the center of the staff. The way that they do this is that the 0 point, if we set that to 0, the top edge of the text will line up with the top line. So that's it's weird that it does it like that, but that's exactly what's going on. So there almost always has to be a vertical offset here, and in this case it was 0.05556, I believe, which will pretty much center the text on the center line here. Now, this value is going to necessarily be different if you're using a different font size for these staff names, so you just have to be aware that if you change the size, you may have to go in here and change the vertical alignment as well. Now, we have the option, as I mentioned, to change the alignment. So if we didn't want to right align these texts, we could left align them. Now, when we choose the left alignment, it's going to reset the horizontal offset or the distance from staff back to 0. And you can see exactly what's going on here. Now, the left edge of the text is lining up with the left bar line, which is not it doesn't look good because now it's all the way into the staff. So we're going to have to create a much larger horizontal offset in order to get this trumpet 2-3 to appear to the left of the staff. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, negative 1.5 will do something like that. It will look pretty good. Now, this looks pretty much the same as what I had before with a right alignment with that different horizontal distance from staff. However, the difference now is that this is all left aligned, so the instrument names are going to be left aligned to that point that's 1.5 to the left of the left bar line, if that makes sense. And if we look at that longest name here, the trumpet in B flat 2-3, you can see that that's just enough room to get it out of the way of the brackets here and everything, and then everything else will be left aligned with it. So that's exactly how that works. Let's just undo that. We could also center align these names if we want. So instead of right or left, we can choose center. And again, it's going to show you that the 0 horizontal distance is, set up, exactly center of the name, but the 0 point is the left bar line. So we're going to have to put a different negative h value here. And I think for this, negative 0.9 works. Let's see. Yeah, that's somewhere around there would look good. Again, this is going to be completely different depending on the staff names that you're using. And you can see that, so now there's a center point of all the text that's 0.9 to the left of the bar lines here, and every one of the names is now center aligning. Of course, I haven't changed anything with the piano because this is a group name, not a staff name, remember that. So that's sort of what's going on there. Let me just undo this and go back there for a second. And all of this applies, by the way, to the abbreviated names. So you can do the same thing with the abbreviated staff names if you want to move it a little bit farther to the left. If you want to go with a center or left justify for that, you can do all of that as well. But let's go back and look at the other part of this position full staff names dialog box. So on the bottom here, we have these justification options. Now, these justification options will only affect the names if there is more than one line on the staff name. Now, in the case of this score, I don't have a single staff that has more than one line. They're all, on a single line. But let's set something up where that might be the case. So I'm going to just go in here on a couple of these instruments. You know what? Let's take the English horn for the full name. And I'm going to put a second line here and call this parentheses cor anglais. Okay. And actually, I'm going to do the same thing on the double bass here. Let's set this to, it says double bass, but I'm just going to put a return there so it appears on two different lines, okay? And what we'll see out of the box with the justification set to right, you'll see that the double lined names will justify to the right. Now there's a little bit of a positioning issue here because again it doesn't center on the center line. It vertically offsets from the top line, which is problematic to me. I kind of wish they would kind of change that so the vertical would be off the center line, but that's another story altogether. But let's actually just talk about what that the justification options are. So with the right justify, and honestly, if you're using right alignment, you should use right justify. If you're using left alignment, you should use left justify. If you're using center alignment, you should use center justify. This will keep everything centered, everything left aligned or right aligned, exactly as you need to. Of course, you don't have to do that. You could right align and left justify. That would look, kind of weird. Actually, let's just do that, see what that looks like. So right align, left justified. It's barely going to see a difference on the English horn, but you'll notice it in the double bass part so that it's, it's right justified, but it's left, it's right aligned, but it's left justified. All right, so that's sort of how that works. There's a couple other options there just want to point out. So that's the justification. There is this full and forced full justification options. So the full justification is a little bit misleading and almost non-useful. The full justification is what will allow the words to stretch out so that it will align left and right of the text. However, if you know anything about full justification, you never full justify the last line. And in most cases, you would never really have more than 2 lines if you're going to do a name like this. So choosing the full justify is essentially the same as choosing the left justify. They leave this option in here. I mean, I think this is something that comes up in other text box, and I just think that they didn't realize that it doesn't really have much of an application here. The forced full justify will work slightly different. You can even see in the English horn, incidentally, you can see that the English horn cor anglais is now displayed here. The reason being is that now this is the longest word in the staff name, so that's what's going on. But you can kind of see just a subtle difference between the English horn and the cor anglais. There's just a slightly more space so that the English horn and the cor anglais will now line up on the left and right edge. So if we click on that, you'll see that that will happen. And incidentally, nothing will happen to the double bass part because there's only one word on each line. However, we can use force full, but also expand single word. Now, this will have no effect when there's more than one word on each line, but in the case of the double bass, what that will do, if you can see that, it will force justify that word to line up just like that. Now, I don't know the usefulness of this, but that's exactly how that works, and that's exactly what that option does. But again, as I mentioned, most times you're just going to write a line and write justify, and that's probably all you need to do. Now, one little difference between the staff names here and the group names, if I were to go to set default name position for full group names here, the major difference here is the vertical adjustment. In this case, the vertical alignment here is set to 0, and the vertical 0 point will always be the point directly center of both staffs of where the group is. Or if there's multiple staffs, it will be the center point between all of those staffs. So in this case, with the vertical alignment for the groups, anything positive of 0 here will send the group name to the top, to above the center point. Anything negative will send it below the center point. So in this case, a 0 value here is perfectly good and exactly the way that you want to go. Notice that Finale's, this is the settings out of the box. They will set this horizontal a little bit farther away than the staffs. I think that's just to make room for the brace. So that's the slight difference there. And so this has all been the default positioning. And as you saw me working with this, you saw all of these names will get adjusted as I'm doing this. So what happens if we need to adjust just a single staff? And this English horn cor anglais marking here is exactly a good case for this because in this case, again, it's centering just the single line here, which means that the second line of words sort of gets underneath, and it doesn't look right. You kind of want this to be, centered overall. So what we do here is we go into the staff attributes, and we are going to go ahead and check where it says full staff name position. Now, when we check this box, what we are doing is overriding the default position for the English horn staff, right? And then we go into the set button here, and this pulls up the exact same window that we just saw for the default positions, except now this is only affecting the English horn marking for the full staff name in this case. And so we can set our values here if we need to. I should have mentioned that in addition to changing the values here, we can also actually just grab this name here and drag it. And if you use the shift, you can constrain the dragging one direction or another. So in this case, I'm just going to hold down shift and just drag it upwards a little bit until I think it's just about center, which is right there. And you can see the value here, the vertical value, just actually went from negative .05556 to positive .0556. So that's the adjustment I would make for two-line staffs with this type of text at this size and everything. Again, these are all going to be different depending if you're using different fonts and everything. So I just managed to do that. And of course, we can change the alignment if we want. We can change the justification for this too. In fact, we could do the forced full if we really wanted to for this, but we'll leave it as it is, right justified. Change the vertical value here, and again, because this is checked in the staff attributes, now this full staff name position is overriding the default staff name position, and we can have effectively a unique position just for this full staff name on the English horn. We could do the same thing with a double bass if we want. Actually, before I do that, let me just jump to the group name here for the piano. We could do the same thing with the piano. Again, if we check the positioning box for the full group name here and check the position button, we'll get the same dialog box, except this will only apply to this group, and in this case, this full group name. So if we wanted this to be, I don't know, if we want it to be a little bit closer just for this group, we can, shift drag it a little bit to the right to change, and it will change the number here, and then that piano marking will just get a little bit closer to the brace. So again, depending on whether you're using group names or staff names, it doesn't matter. You just have to have this box checked and a position set here to override the default positions. Now, since I'm going down here, I'm going to have to fix this double bass marking here. There is one other way that we can do this without going into the staff attributes and going into the full staff name position. We can actually do this directly from the score, and there's a couple different ways to do this. First of all, if we select that handle on the name right there and go back to the staff menu, there is another thing down here called position names. And when you have something selected, one of these options will become available to you. In this case, it is a full staff name that I checked, so you do have the option to change the full staff name here. If I had actually selected the group name, the thing that I would be able to change is the full group name. Same thing with abbreviated and abbreviated group name here. But what I can do is just select that box, go to staff, position names, full staff names, and change the values here if I want. I could also right-click here and choose the position full staff name here, and this will take me to the same place. In fact, it's the same thing as if you had gone through this menu and chosen this option here. So that's just right-clicking, and you can always right-click from the selection tool to do the same thing. The position full staff name will take you to that exact same box. But the other thing that we can do is actually just grab the handle here and drag it in the score to put it where we need it to. And interestingly, what this does, if you go back into the staff attributes now, is that it checks this option for you, full staff name position. And if you check the set button here, it will show you the new vertical value in this case because I dragged it upwards. So it's interesting that manually dragging the staff names will indeed, check this so that we are overriding the default staff names. All right. And of course, once we make a change like this, we could always right-click and choose the remove manual adjustments, and you'll see it will go back to its original position or its default position, and in the staff attributes it will become unchecked. So there's a little bit of flexibility as to how you can change things. You don't even need to go into that dialog box to change the position. In that case, I just grabbed it and shift moved it, and in fact you don't even need to be in the staff tool. You can do that from the selection tool. I can grab this and move this however I want. And once again, those positions will be reflected in the staff attributes in this little dialog box. It will show you exactly the positions that you set there. So a lot of flexibility changing these staff name positions without even going through any of the menus. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is that all of this can be done as staff styles too. So if for some reason there's a staff label that's in the way and you need to drastically move it or something, unfortunately what you can't do is you can't take this particular instance of the abbreviated staff name and move it off to the left, because that will actually affect all of them going forward. You can see every single abbreviated staff name gets changed. And the reason for that is obviously that when you go in here, you now see that the abbreviated staff name position is checked, meaning it's overriding the default, and this is set to a different value. So, and that applies to every instance of the abbreviated staff name. Again, remove manual adjustments. There we go. However, we can do this as a staff style. So I'm going to just create a new staff style, and I'm going to call this new alternate staff name position. Okay. And what I'm looking for here is up here where it says full staff name. Of course, we know that we can check these and actually change the staff name, but we can also change the position. And with this marking with a minus sign here, that means that there is no change in the position to the staff name. However, if we check one of these, we can indeed change the position. So actually the one I want to change is the abbreviated staff name position. And then I can go in here, and now from here I will have to actually move the position. So again, I can just kind of shift drag this over to get it a little bit farther to the left and click OK. And so now I've set up this staff style with this option checked for the position. Now again, I could have done it for the full staff name if I wanted to as well, but I just did it for the abbreviated staff name, change the position. And, if I needed to, I could also actually change the name here and create this as one big staff style that will change the name and change the position, but I don't necessarily need to do that. All I'm doing is changing the staff name position, and I click OK, and now nothing happens because I only created the staff style, but as soon as I apply that staff style to even just this single measure, you'll see that that staff name position gets moved a little bit to the left, and it will not affect the ones going forward. So if you need to change actually the position of just a single abbreviated staff name, this is actually the way that you would have to do it. Unfortunately, you can't just grab one of these and drag it out of the way because it will change it everywhere in the abbreviated staff names. Finally, there is one other miscellaneous thing I want to talk about, not necessarily related to positioning, but actually showing the staff names. If you right-click one of these handles, and again, you can do it from the staff tool or actually just from the selection tool, there is this one option here called Show, and it's usually checked. If you uncheck that, you will see that that staff name will actually get grayed out, and when that happens, this staff label will not get printed anymore. Now, if you do that on a full staff name or a full group name, depending on where you do that, it will only affect this one instance. However, if you do that on, let's say, an abbreviated name, click Show here, this will actually apply to all instances of that abbreviated staff name. You see that it's grayed out for the oboe here, it's grayed out for the oboe here, and if I keep going, it'll keep being grayed out. So that's just a possibly quick way to hide the staff labels if you need to. Again, they'll be grayed out so you can actually see what it is, but you will never be able to print it when it's grayed out like that. So just a little extra thing about hiding the staff or group names there. All right, so that is all you need to know about positioning for the staff and group names. There's a lot to it. Hopefully this makes a lot more sense now. So come back, I'm going to do one more video on staff and group name labeling, which is going to be a little bit more about some practical ways to do some things that you might encounter for your staff name labeling. So come back for that. That will be fun to do. All right. Once again, thanks for watching. My name is Jason. Don't forget to subscribe. Much appreciated. And I will see you soon on the next video.